I recently published a video that showed how to replace the bushings on the Timbren axle suspension system. I decided to make this short video on just how to lubricate the system. After seeing the wear on our bushings, I think it's important to pick the right grease, but it's even more important to grease properly and to grease frequently. Check the description for my current recommendation for the type of grease. They're not all made the same. A higher load rating, which I think is important in this case, along with a low washout, because we do a lot of water crossings and we also power wash our trailer, which includes washing that suspension system. I think either size grease gun would work just fine, but the smaller pistol grip style I think is a lot more handy. One thing that is important is to have a flexible hose. So if you have a standard grease gun with this type of a rigid tubing, it's probably not going to work because there's very little room to get this up underneath the trailer. But this can easily be replaced by a flexible line. It's very important to have the correct connector. This one is long enough to reach up into that hole, which the Zerk fitting is quite deep, so a standard fitting like this may not fit. The problem with this common fitting, aside from the fact that they're prone to leaking, is that they also become stuck, and stuck to the point that it requires a pair of pliers and a wrench in order to dismantle this end. And that's just not going to be possible if this has been inserted up inside of that access port in order to reach the Zerk fitting. And then if you wrestle around with this, trying to free that end, there's a good chance that you may snap off the Zerk fitting. And that's something that you definitely don't want to do, especially in that location. Now let's take a look at this where it's easier to see. With the right tools and supplies, this is a real easy job to do. Clean off the Zerk fitting, attach the connector. It's secure. Pump the grease gun, and when you see the excess flow coming from around the bushing, you're finished. You just squeeze the grip again and it comes right off. This is where having the right tools definitely makes the job easier. First, here's our pivot bolt, and directly in line with it is the access port for that Zerk fitting. So the first thing you want to do is find that with your finger. Then you can reach up with some type of a solvent and spray, and that'll help clean up the Zerk fitting. Then you give your connector a squeeze here, and then again, somewhat blindly finding that access hole right there. Go straight up. You know it's in the proper position when it's firmly connected. Now you simply pump here, and you'll feel the resistance, and eventually you will see a ribbon of grease, and there's the excess grease. Then you squeeze the release, it'll pull right off. So I have this Timbren all cleaned up. This thing is built nice and heavy duty. I don't see any issues with this at all. But these, on the other hand, there's definitely some uneven wear. It looks something like this when it's installed. There's a gap between the two, and that gap can fill with grease, but there's nothing really, that causes that to transfer into the bearing surface. So the other thing that I'm doing now is once I've initially greased the Zerk fitting, I take the trailer out for a drive on a bumpy road, get some action going with the suspension, and then bring it back and lubricate one more time. And I believe that is a better strategy for making sure that the grease gets distributed all the way around the inside of this bushing. I will admit that we put a lot of miles on the trailer. I believe they call for greasing every year or every 12,000 miles. Replacing the Timbren bushings was not an easy chore. Our trailer sees a lot of off-road use, and I'd like to get as much life as possible out of these bushings, so I'm going to step up our greasing program to every 6,000 miles, or twice a year. And with this setup, greasing the Timbren suspension is a very simple task.